These things are incredibly, ridiculously complicated for no reason. I think what happened is this is a black idiot, and I think jurors were afraid to be as punitive as they could against a black man. The anti-police rhetoric has gotten to a perpetual state of tainting the juries.
After some confusion at the courthouse, a split verdict tonight against the man responsible for the death of hero NYPD Detective Jonathan Diller. Guy Rivera was found not guilty of the most serious first-degree murder charge.
I am deeply disappointed that the top murder charge did not result in a conviction. The failure to convict on murder one landed like a gut punch to all members of the NYPD.
21 times arrested, this thug, and the person in the car with him was arrested many times.
Shout out to Verdict, best bourbon in the game. Give it a try. Don't believe me, look at the reviews. We're already in multiple restaurants. We're getting ready to get in the grocery store, one of the biggest, most prominent grocery stores in Arizona. And everything is going really, really great. Why? Because we took our time to make a real bourbon. Let me just say this real quick. I'm going to vent just a little bit, bruh. There's other people that just slap their name on stuff because they're a celebrity or they have whatever. Man, we took our time and we went methodically through sampling and producing the best bourbon that we could. Period. And this is why when people come to our booth and why people try the bourbon, they buy it online and they drink it. We go to the restaurants and we do a tasting. This is why people are 100% of the time, they go, oh, we got to carry this. Oh, this is the best bourbon I ever had. Why? Because we actually drink bourbon and we know what it's supposed to taste like, and we got the best bourbon in the game, hands down, especially at the price point. There ain't no bourbon better than ours at the price point. Let's get to the first topic, and this is the topic of the verdict. It was a split verdict in New York. Obviously, the police were upset. The family of Mr. Diller was upset because they had a split verdict. They could not find the suspect, who's a brazen criminal, 21 arrests. They could not find him guilty of first-degree murder. Now, as a police officer that did investigations, I know about charging, I did the research on this thing, I'm going to articulate to you clearly both perspectives. The first perspective is why they came to the conclusion. The second perspective is why I think they got the conclusion wrong because of the convictions that they got him on. You can't convict a guy of this and then not convict him of that, in my personal opinion. But let's get to the news clip. Roll it.
After some confusion at the courthouse, a split verdict tonight against the man responsible for the death of hero NYPD Detective Jonathan Diller. Guy Rivera was found not guilty of the most serious first-degree murder charge, but the jury says he's guilty of all the other counts, including aggravated manslaughter and attempted murder. Eyewitness News reporter Sonia Rincon with what the confusion was all about.
Whether Guy Rivera intended to point his gun and fire it at Detective Jonathan Diller when he refused orders to get out of a car and Diller's partner reached into it became the central argument of the case. The jury found 36-year-old Rivera not guilty of first-degree murder. The reaction from Diller's wife, family, and fellow officers who spent more than 3 weeks hearing excruciating evidence and testimony.
Shocked and devastated. There is no doubt, the facts were there.
But the jury found Rivera guilty of aggravated manslaughter for shooting Diller in March 2024 in Far Rockaway, and the attempted murder of Diller's partner for what he did with the gun after shooting Diller.
He pushed it right against Sergeant Rosen's chest, and he tried pulling the trigger. It's a miracle that Sergeant Rosen is still here with us, and thankfully, the gun jammed.
That attempted murder charge actually carries the longest potential sentence of the 4 counts the jury convicted him of after deliberating a full day.
I stand here today proud of that verdict. Guy Rivera will face at a maximum of 90 years to life as a sentence for all of the crimes that he was convicted of today.
When that mixed verdict was first announced, it was emotional enough for Diller's family and fellow cops. But there was something else that stunned the court that was unusual. When the judge polled the jury, one juror indicated that was not his verdict. The judge asked the jury to go back and deliberate. They returned 2 hours later with the same verdict. This time it was unanimous.
We are grateful that he's going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. We're grateful for the DA and her entire team, but it hurts.
All right, so let's go to the charges real quick because a lot of people will probably be confused by these charges. especially if you don't do this for a living. It can be very confusing because different states have different charges for first-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated manslaughter, all of these different things. So let's go through the first one. Obviously, we know first-degree murder is premeditated murder, right? So in this incident, let's put it up on the screen just real quick before we play it. In this incident, if the guy intends to, that means that even in a split second, he make the decision and I'm going to pull a gun out and shoot somebody, that is enough for premeditation, right? Even if it takes 2 seconds, that can establish premeditation. You pull the gun and you shoot an officer, that is first-degree murder. Now, the footage that we have right here is grainy. You cannot tell what happened whatsoever. I'm assuming that there's body-worn camera footage and that the jurors were able to see more than we're able to see right now, which could be why they made a conclusion that went a certain way. Now, this is the risk factor of having a court system the way we do, where you are being evaluated or the case is being evaluated by your peers, because some people are retarded and not everybody can figure this out. Now, not saying that that's the case in these jurors, but I'm saying that's the case that you run into when you go to court, because some people who are not trained professionals, who do not understand the law, who are subject to peer pressure, right? If you are the only one holding out, which we heard them say before, that there was one jury said, that's not my verdict. They go back and then they're unanimous. Sometimes what happens is if somebody is not very strong-minded and they feel as if they're alienating or they can get the case thrown out because it's a hung jury, they may capitulate. That's the scary part of some of these things. So first-degree murder, they said he did not do. That means that they made a determination that he did not intend to shoot the police officer, which goes to the second charge, which he was found guilty of, is aggravated manslaughter. Now, aggravated manslaughter in this case is somebody who's reckless, negligent, and does not show any value for life, which means that he did not show any duty, concern at the poor behavior that he was exhibiting, which led to a shooting of the officer who lost his life. This is what they found him guilty on. Then they found him guilty on another charge of attempted murder, which is where it gets crazy at. Because how do you find a man not guilty of murdering a guy or murdering a police officer, a detective, an honorable man of the New York Police Department, but then you find him guilty of attempted murder? And in this case, the way they articulate the attempted murder is that after he shot and killed the detective, he then pulled a gun and attempted to shoot and kill another officer, but the gun jammed. So they determined that the second altercation was an attempted murder. He pointed the gun at the chest of another officer or detective, and he pulled the trigger. So how do you find that he didn't mean to shoot and kill the first person he killed, but yet he had intent to pull the trigger and kill the second person? If the guy is hell-bent on murdering somebody, his behavior will be consistent with what he did in both situations. Somehow they found him guilty of attempted murder on another responding police officer, which they're all kind of in the same area. And then possession of a weapon, right? He was in possession, I believe, illegally of a firearm. He had it staged in the car. All of those things made him illegally in possession. And let's see, I think I missed a charge here. Criminal possession of a firearm. And then there was criminal possession of a weapon. So let me read these off to you. No, it's the same one. That's the same charge. Attempted murder, criminal possession of a weapon, and it just continues on to my second page. That's what it is. Criminal possession of a weapon. Let me read this out to you. Criminal possession of a weapon is simply possession of a loaded firearm, intent to use it unlawfully against another person. So they find him guilty of being in possession of a firearm with the intent to unlawfully use it. So if he's in possession, he's unlawfully using a gun. How is his unlawful use of the gun not unlawful in the murder, but then they determine it's unlawful in the attempted murder? These things are incredibly, ridiculously complicated for no reason. I think what happened is this is a black idiot, and I think jurors were afraid to be as punitive as they could against a black man. That's the anti-police rhetoric has gotten to a perpetual state of tainting the juries. It's in a perpetual state. That means that the average person is going into a situation with a bias against law enforcement. and somehow feeling sorry for a suspect. One reason is because he's black. Because in their mind, the black man is always targeted for no reason. It's a traffic stop that should have never happened because he's a black man. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. I wasn't a part of the jury pool. I didn't listen to the jurors' deliberation. But what I can say is this makes no sense whatsoever. Now, the caveat of it is that he may spend the rest of his life in prison. But also, if you're not found for the first charge of first-degree murder, then there's eligibility of parole. So if you're found first-degree murder, they can eliminate your eligibility of parole, give you life in prison with no possibility of parole. But when you're not found with the first-degree murder charge and you're found with those lesser charges, they can give you 90 years in prison. They can run it up and do whatever they want. But he could be eligible for parole in 30 years. That's the risk factor that we're running up against when it comes to the poor charging. And this is why the prosecution and law enforcement and the family are so upset about this, and I think rightfully so. Let's watch the footage real quick. You can hardly see anything, but just look at it. The circle is the incident. If you look at the back of the vehicle, to the right of the back of the vehicle, where you see the black image, it seems like the detective and the suspect are there standing together. Roll it. You hear the bang, pause. You hear the bang, and that appears to be the initial shooting. Now, I don't know if they saw something else on a body-worn camera or other surveillance that we're not privy to that will indicate that it wasn't intentionally discharged. And then you go on and watch the footage, and a little bit later in the footage, continue. A little bit later in the footage, you will see right here. You saw his hand go up. I know it's hard to see. His hand goes up, and it looks like he attempted to shoot the other officer. Now, why they didn't fill him with bullet holes is incredibly bizarre to me. And another thing could be they don't want to shoot a black man, because you shoot a black man, you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life, no matter how much thuggery he's been doing or the thuggery he's participating in currently. And so this is why people are outraged in part. Let me give you the alternative, because I don't want to always give you one side. I got to give you the alternative side, meaning that if the jurors were correct. Now, let me explain it this way. Okay, pause the video so I can talk. So let me explain it this way. For the jurors to be correct in this situation, there is a possibility that he accidentally shot the first officer, but he intended to shoot and kill the second officer. That could happen, right? That means that if he's handling a firearm, and if they can see that he pulls the firearm out and it accidentally discharged, he didn't get to the point of trying to kill the officer because it accidentally discharged before he actually pointed it and pulled the trigger. If a defense is successfully able to argue that, you can't go outside of the confines of the law to prosecute somebody because they're a dirtbag. So if somehow he was intending to pull the trigger and shoot the cop, they cannot determine what his mindset was at the time. Maybe he testified to the fact that he didn't intend to do it. And then he later testifies to the fact that he intended to kill the second officer because he knew after shooting the first officer he was going to get shot. So he said, I'm going to kill the next few officers intentionally. It's bizarre to come to that conclusion, but that conclusion could be had. Because if you give them jury instructions to look at these as multiple incidents, meaning that you got to look at the solo incident of him killing Mr. Diller as a separate incident, and then he re-engages in an incident with the other officers. If you separate the incidents like that, and the jury instructions is for them to separate the incidents, then they have to evaluate the first incident separate from the totality of circumstances, which means that if accidentally done it, then they have to charge him appropriately the way that they did. I find that very difficult to believe that that's the way they should have charged him, but I didn't see the body-worn camera. Based on everything I'm seeing right now, I disagree with the way the verdict went. Okay, so I just want to give y'all a balanced perspective because this is an outrageous incident that happened. This is an outrageous verdict, and it's going viral because people are pissed. They're upset about this, and I understand why. That's why I wanted to make sure that from a law enforcement perspective, I give you the proper angle of both sides, because I'm not biased enough to act like it can only be one way, because I was not there. And I do not know if the jury was biased or not, and I do not know what the deliberation was. So With that being said, RIP to the Detective Diller and his family. And I believe that these people should go to jail for life and get the death penalty if they intentionally kill a police officer. That should be a protected group of government officials. Just like if you shoot and kill the president intentionally, you should get the death penalty. You intentionally shoot a law enforcement officer, intentionally, not accidentally, but intentionally, you premeditated the murder, you should get the death penalty. No questions asked. Okay, let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about it, and then I'm gonna move on to our next subject, which is just James Fishback, who is an absolute nut job. And wait till you hear who supports and endorses this guy. Roll the Trump clip.
21 times arrested, this thug. And the person in the car with him was arrested many times. And they don't learn because they don't respect. They're not given the respect. The police are the greatest people we have. There's nothing and there's nobody like them. And this should never happen. I just visited with a very beautiful wife that now doesn't have her husband. Stephanie was just incredible. Their child, brand new, beautiful baby. So they're innocent as can be. And doesn't know how his life has been changed. But the Diller family you'll never be the same. You can never be the same.
Shout out to President Trump, and this is one of the reasons why I support Republicans and why I support Donald Trump is because the admiration, duly admiration, to support law enforcement officers.